afternoon and welcome to an exclusive webinar brought to you by Netcore Cloud YourStory on customer retention and engagement, the challenges faced by founders in early stages and solutions implemented. My name is Priya Sheth and I'm a senior anchor at YourStory. I will be your moderator for today's session. So let's get started. Now, if you're here with us today, it means that you've got an innovative product or service, a great team in place, and a potential pool of customers to sell to. However, that's just the beginning. How do you ensure that you engage the right customer and consequently retain them? Is there a way that you can take a relationship that is purely transactional and transform it into something of far greater value? Or customer engagement and retention are some of the top challenges for any D2C or app-based brand, and you have to deal with rising levels of competition in the market and customers who are spoiled for choice. Now, Netcore has organized this webinar to help you answer these questions. Each and every one of our guest panelists was once an early stage startup founder dealing with the same challenges that you are facing at this point. So through their experiences and strategies, we will talk about various aspects at this point in time. You will learn a framework for understanding your users and segmenting them to personalized marketing. How do you build a seamless user onboarding and user activation on your app as well as your website? You will learn how you can personalize user experiences to engage with them better, how to reduce drop-offs as well as churn rate. I know that's a very, very important aspect. Improve user conversions and drive LTV, and build conversations through effective re-engagement campaigns via multi or an omni-channel approach. So we have with us a power-packed panel. Let me introduce all our speakers to you. We have with us Udyan Valvekar, who's the founder at Growth X. We have Kunal Verma, the CEO and co-founder at Trio. We have Karan Chaudhary, the co-founder at Wow Skin Sciences India, and Abdul Sevankar, who's the Chief Growth Officer and Business Head at Netcore Cloud. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. I'm going to begin with you, Udyan. How is Growth X personalizing, automating, and scheduling communications for all the user base to ensure and improve user engagement out there? Udyan?
Awesome. First of all, thank you so much, folks, for having me in here. Who over here has struggled with just automating stuff, or if you've automated in the past, have you got like good results from your marketing automation, product automation suites, etc.? Just drop a yes or no. I'm just going to give a couple of seconds.
We're seeing a lot of yeses already.
Perfect. This is a great audience. Right? Awesome. So I think a lot of people who are saying yes are going to resonate with what I'm going to say about how we really approach personalization, or whatever you want to call it, right? The most important point for us, at least at GrowthX, is to start with the user, right? Obviously, we have all heard about spray and pray methods, and spray and pray methods are just lazy and ineffective, right? Having a focused approach means two things. One is you will lose out on the people who are not on a fit for you when you're trying to communicate with them, but you'll also in turn increase a lot of funnel efficiency. So at GrowthX, the approach is this, right? First, we try to understand the user and their job to be done, right? So for every single customer is trying to hire your product to do something, right? They are hiring your product to solve a problem statement for them, regardless of all the fancy features that we want to sell. Depending on the stage of their career, early stage or not, they'll have different kind of end goals, right? And our approach is basically take each user. Let's say, for example, I'm going to take a user of marketing. I think a lot of marketing people are on this call, right? So if you're a marketer in early stage, my communication and our communication is going to be very different to you versus, let's say, a marketing leader with 10 years of experience, right? This is how we are looking at automating and scheduling. I think figuring this out first, on being very sure about why you're trying to send that communication, is I think more than half the battle kind of solved, and then kind of going and automating and scheduling it is the second half. But I hope that answers the question, Priya.
Right. Thanks for that, Udyan. Very well said. Let's come to you, Kunal, to talk a little bit about customer engagement, because we all know that it goes way beyond just services but as support. So, and because trust is finally a key factor, when finances are involved. So how do you go about building that kind of trust with your customers?
Sure. Thanks, Priya. Uh, it's an important question, because when you just hear the question by itself, it sounds like a very simple and intuitive thing to do, which is to build trust. But it is one of the most critical and, I would say, difficult things to follow through in a sustained manner over a long period of time. It's like an interaction between two parties. It could be two people talking. The two people meet each other, let's say at an airport, or you just meet somebody at a cafe, and you have a conversation. At the first go, nobody wants to instill their trust in the other person, right? It takes time. Maybe you have more information exchange, you part with some personal information, and then you get the person to understand, you understand that person, and that establishes, let's say, a basic realm of trust. On top of that, you further engage and build a larger relationship. It is no different for a business or a company like ours. Trust in financial services, the world that we operate in, is specifically very important and a super touchy subject. So what we do is we try to start from day one in terms of being transparent with our customer. So it's a set of processes that a customer may have to go through, might have to jump through some hoops, like KYC, some processes, information sharing, verification, and so on and so forth. But those are important steps in a, let's say, a larger process where a customer wants to consume a service or a product. And if we are transparent with the customer in terms of privacy, information sharing, time taken, the complexity, then the customer starts believing you more, rather than actually going on the lines of making false promises. So the first thing I would say is actually instilling a transparency without making false promises. And the second thing is trying to follow through and being open about your mistakes. Now, nobody is perfect, which means that, as a company, as a business, no matter how qualified you are and how committed you are, you will make mistakes, because ultimately we are all a group of people working together. And customers like honesty. So when you make a mistake, whether you're actually ordering food or looking for a cab or actually doing a financial transaction, if you make a mistake as a company, the customer expects you to own up to that mistake and be simple, truthful, humble about it, apologize, try to make amends, and then move on. Because the problem comes in when you try to be in a state of denial and you think that the customer has no option, so you can just take the customer by, take them for a ride. So following through in terms of being honest and apologetic if you have a mistake made, but being absolutely clear that, okay, hey, this is how it is and I will follow through, is a huge factor in building trust. Now, this would translate into your customer service interaction, your turnaround time, the communication that you send, and actually letting the customer reach out to you. Because a lot of times we just say, hey, this is a do not reply automated email service where we have acknowledged your problem, but you cannot contact us. That's pretty frustrating for all of us as individuals. So why wouldn't our customers feel frustrated? So making sure that there is actually a human touch or a point where customers can reach out to and expect a response is important. So if I were to, without belaboring too many points, if I were to summarize, these would be the 2 points. One would be to be absolutely honest and transparent upfront. Second thing is following through on what you said, and if you make mistakes, owning up on those and just being committed to what you said you will do.
Right. Thanks for that, Kunal. Let's come to you, Abdul, to talk a little bit about what Netcore's products really are looking at. Solving to achieve maximum customer retention. You have a rich insight into how the kind of problems that a lot of early stage startups really face when it comes to building the right kind of experience for customers. So what kind of challenges, have you seen so far, and what can our attendees really anticipate when you talk about these kind of products and solutions?
Yeah, so I think, that's a great question in terms of, I think, challenges that we've very commonly seen, especially in early stage startups, is the fact that their focus is very heavy on acquisition. So they're spending a lot of money acquiring users, but spending very less time on making sure that they get the right experience when they come on their app or their website, right? And I think that is one fundamental challenge that we see amongst most of the early stage startups, and which I think has to shift And I'm not saying acquisition is not important, but I think it has to shift from giving a lot more focus to, let's say, the right onboarding, making sure you're activating users, helping users actually get to the aha moment a lot more faster, right? And most of them kind of tend to leave that up to the user to figure things out himself. So I think one big challenge is spending a lot of attention on just acquisition and not on the experience once the user comes on your property. The second I would say is your most of the brands today are dealing with the Gen Z, right? The millennials who essentially are either they have less time in hand or they are low on patience, which essentially means that the experience you give to some of these users when they first land onto your website, your app, has to be even more personalized, because you need to make sure that they find the right products, they discover the right products a lot more faster. So I think, again, focusing on personalizing the experience for some of these brands and making it as frictionless as possible, I think I would say is the second thing. And the third thing, to sum up, I would say would be while some brands do focus on that first relationship and make sure that the user gets to the first transaction or the first activation moment, but I think making sure you're building that personal connect with the customer, even after that first purchase, through channels like email, WhatsApp, push notification. And the point I'm trying to make here is, it's not just about sending more discounts and promotions to buy the next product, but just to take an example, right? If I've bought a product from Wow Skincare for kids, emails around videos which would help, which would talk about how you have to massage your baby, right? Because they have oils which can help do massage a baby, or let's say must-haves when you're traveling with a baby. Essentially not selling your products directly, but actually using content to build that relation and top of the mind recall is again something that brands don't do that well. But I would say these are the top three challenges that we've commonly seen not getting so much attention.
Right. Well said, Avdut. Coming to you, Karan, I've been looking at your products, and the one core proposition that stuck with me is safe, nature-inspired, and dermatologically tested for safety. So tell us a little bit about how a strong value proposition can bring in customers, increase clicks. So what did you think about when you came out with this strong proposition?
Thanks so much for this, Priya. But let me just start off by saying that a value proposition always keeps changing, and it changes dramatically. Let me go back to history. Where did e-commerce start? It started with providing a great value proposition of cash on delivery. People didn't have trust in the ecosystem. The value proposition came up that you don't have to give money upfront. You can get any product which is based out of cash on delivery. It comes in your hand, then you pay. And then in my industry, which was in beauty, when we came into the scene in probably 2014, 2015, there was a lot of education which was not done to the Indian consumer when it came down to safe, natural beauty, and why certain products should be good for you, why you should use them, and why you should not use something else. And that was not properly educated. India being a very, very price-sensitive country, we were not given the best. Me and my brother traveled the world. We always believed that we were not getting the best ingredients, best products, and there was a lot to offer to India. But again, the problem over here was, how do you educate the customer? And the education process turned out to be a very, very strong value proposition. How did the education process happen? Very grateful to the internet, very grateful to the videos, very grateful to email, SMS, and that was helping out a value proposition come, where people started getting a lot educated upon why you should use a certain product and why you should probably not use a certain product. Over a period of time, and I'm sure you have taken, you've seen this earlier. I mean, we had spoken a lot about safe, nature-inspired beauty, dermatologically tested. Yeah, these were there, and these were very, very relevant in a non-cluttered market, probably in 2017, 2018, and even 2019. today the value proposition is coming, and where people are coming and saying, sure, we have that, we understand that, a lot of people, a lot of Me Too's are already doing that. What next? What is the brand doing for me? What is the brand doing for the environment? How are you making a difference to the environment? And I think the value proposition is gone over there right now. So over a period of time, we see a value proposition changing. It's very, very important to have a very, very strong value proposition and keep talking and keep communicating with customers as much as possible. And only then you have customers who will stick by you, swear by you, and probably any new product which would come, they would always be the first in line to try it out. Wow, Skin Science has had a great amount of a repeat. We have had a great loyal base. We were one of the last beauty brands to be funded because we were pretty much bootstrapped for the longest time. And that could have only been possible with a very, very strong brand following and a retention policy in hand. So yeah, at the end of the day, value proposition is something what people connect to. And if people do connect to you, I think it's a long way to go.
Right. Thanks for that. I want to also talk to you a little bit about different aspects of hyper-personalization as well. But before I come to these topics, I just want to tell our audience that, we're going to be having a round of Q&A at the end of this session. So please type in your questions in the chat box below, and we'll come back to you with all the answers that you require, all the tips and the advice that you require. So please type in your questions in the chat box below. Let's come to you, Vivian. I want to talk a little bit about the frameworks that you can talk about that founders can use to understand their users at this point, and what kind of segments can they begin with?
All right, I'm going to start off by asking someone in the chat itself. Folks, when was the last time you actually spoke to a customer in the chat? Very quickly. And I'm not talking about like one-off customer, but like I'm talking about when was the last time you spoke to, let's say, hundreds of customers in the last 1 week?
I think a lot of people are saying that they're doing this on a day-to-day basis regularly.
Perfect. Like I said, I love this audience. They're already on track. Right. So let's start with there, because I think that's the biggest miss. But some frameworks to understand audience. I think here are the three things on three questions at least I like to ask about my customers, regardless of what part of the funnel am I talking about: acquisition, onboarding, engagement, retention, monetization, the entire game, right? So the first is who are they? And one of the best frameworks I've come across that really cements this to trying to understand who your customers really are is the ICP, which is the ideal customer profile, right? In B2C, you would have combinations about your demographics. In B2B, you would add layers about industry, the amount of money that they're spending with you, all of that stuff, right? Company size, stuff like that. But that's a very constructive way of understanding who, what are they trying to do. So any guesses on what's one framework that you can use and what they're trying to do? I'm going to explain this, but as I explain this, let's see if there's someone understands it in the chat. When you're trying to understand what someone's trying to do, one thing that has helped me a lot, and this is something that I've picked up from my fellow product design heads, is a customer journey map. A customer journey map really helps you to understand what your customers are doing while they're evaluating your product. Okay, once you've signed up, not just on your product, but also off it, right? What are they thinking about it, right? What are they negotiating in their minds about it? It really helps. You can add layers of qualitative and quantitative data. So qualitative will be obviously talking to your users and then doing it. Quantifiable ways, there are a lot of tools that help you understand heat maps and the way user sessions and stuff like that, right? The third one, we spoke about who, we spoke about what. The third one is the most important one and the hardest one to solve as well, is why are they signing up on your product? And this one is harder to digest because they're not really signing up for your product. They have a problem and they're trying to hire your product to solve for it. They don't really care about all the shiny stuff that you have, right? And the best framework to understand why someone's signing up for their product in my mind is the jobs to be done framework. So it's also called the JTBD framework, right? Indranil, I think a lot of people on the GrowthX fam have already started replying that. A quick example of JTBD, and I'll kind of summarize, is that a lot of times we feel like people are signing up for our products because of wise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 features, but fundamentally they're trying to chase that 12-month goal for them, right? Whatever that end goal is will fall into 4 buckets. Your jobs to be done will only fall into 4 buckets, regardless of any product you have. They'll either fall into a functional bucket, a personal bucket, let's say personal goal that they're trying to solve. Functional would be something like a Jira, organizing stuff. Personal would be like a personal milestone, a financial goal, right? I want to make more money. And then social goals, right? I want to show that I'm doing something cool. There is no other goal that humans in general have apart from these 4. So that's the framework. So who, what, and why, right? And then segmentation, if you want to go there, I mean, you can look at segmentation across different types, but be very clear on why you are trying to segment. I think that is something that people miss out. You can segment people according to your ideal customer, the natural frequency at which they're using the product. For example, if I ask right here, I use probably Swiggy daily, maybe Karan probably uses it weekly, right? Same product, different natural frequency. So you can, or the age-old good RFM grids, especially when you have a lot of data, then you can definitely go with the recency frequency monetary graphs. But be very clear on why of the segmentation. Yeah, Priya. I hope that helps.
Absolutely, very well said. And I think Udyan really knows how to engage with his audience. But yeah, let's come to you,
Part of the
Kunal.
job.
Let's come to you, Kunal. I think Abdut just briefly alluded to the word hyper-personalization, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that with you, because that's really gaining more and more traction, specifically when it comes to the whole banking and financial space. So tell us a little bit about how this affects customers and customer experiences at Trio.
Sure. I think let me begin by saying that, at some level, hyper-personalization can be a double-edged sword, like anything very powerful, if not understood and implemented well. The great thing about hyper-personalization is that you get so obsessed as a company about making sure that the customer gets what he or she wants, that you start focusing on the right problems. You really start wondering about, let's say, turnaround time, latency issues, actual customer experience, interaction design. You start thinking about call to action. You start thinking about how much time and energy the customer is spending on with you in your product ecosystem, and how is it really making a difference to the customer's life, and how can I make it better and better. You start drawing parallels from other experiences that the customer has. For instance, at Frio, our credit line product has always been built on an intuitive chat-based system that we built from scratch in-house. It's like chatting with a friend on WhatsApp. It's available in 8 Indian languages, 8 languages including English, I would say 7 vernacular and then English. Right? So you can actually open the app and you install it, and you start chatting depending on your response. It's not a full-fledged AI system like a robotic system, but it is a pretty smart system in terms of understanding how to respond. And it can actually, depending on how the customer responds, guide the customer in the right direction. So there is some amount of personalization over there. When you take it to the next level, which is to understand that, look, this is exactly what a customer wants, and this is how she is different from, let's say, a customer in some other part of the country. You then start coming up with configurable parameters. You start coming up with specific elements that can be different for different customers. Now, it's a good thing for a customer, but it is a double-edged sword in the sense that it can also put a lot of pressure on you as a brand to maintain and deliver that certain benchmark of standard, because every customer's expectations would also differ quite a lot. So while customers want exactly what suits them, their expectations may differ, and it's not so easy to design something and be truthful about the fact. You can get away with it by saying, well, it's hyper personalization, but it's kind of more or less standard custom with like some little bit of tweaks here and there, and you kind of get away with it because it would be a great marketing and PR tool to say you've done hyper personalization, but you might not have. So it can be a double-edged sword if you don't get it right. For us, the way it has changed things significantly is that in our world, when we are offering a customer a financial product or a service, we have to profile the customer to understand what she or he needs. What is their, let's say, income, what is their credit background, location, geography, all based on the consent and information that the customer is willing to share. And in cases where customers are willing to share the relevant information, it makes it easier for us to understand the customer in depth. And in exchange to that, we can actually give a product where we can price the product more intelligently, which suits a customer's requirement. We can offer something which the customer needs today, vis-a-vis trying to just paste something onto the customer because we have that available. So if a customer walks in and says, hey, I need a credit card, and if today I think that the customer is not eligible for a credit card for, let's say, a certain reason, bunch of reasons, we can tell the customer that, look, we understand your need and we understand your profile, but here's a dilemma. We cannot offer you a credit card right now where you're seeking, let's say, a 2.5 lakh rupee credit limit, but we can start you off with a 50,000, 70,000 rupee line of credit. And after 3 months, we can upgrade you. This is a clear example of very deep personalization. So for us, the fact that we can actually offer customers something that they need, or at least put them on the path where they can get what they want while being truthful to them, is exactly how hyper-personalization is getting manifested. And then there are the other elements like design and interaction, but those supplement the core fundamental need, which is the product that you're giving to the customer. Is it really solving their need today? Or at least are you putting them on that path? So for us, it has come down to configuring the product, pricing the product differently, fine-tuning the process differently, asking different documentation or different questions from a customer, let's say, who is of a certain profile, and keeping that different from somebody else who is of a different profile. So I think that's how we have done it. It has come at a cost in the sense that it's complex. It creates scope for error, and sometimes we make errors. Our code might be buggy, our product might have crashes, but we try our best. So it does come at a certain cost, and I'll be honest about it. Our customers are really teaching us, and they leave no stone unturned to catch us, call us out on social media and tell us that, hey, I was expecting this, but I did not get this. I'm not happy. And that's okay. I think customers keep us honest. And I think that's right, because our purpose is to serve those customers. But I think we are putting in the effort there. So it's coming with a lot of dedication and attention to detail from different teams. But I think it's getting there and it's moving in the right direction.
Absolutely, customers keeping all companies on their toes with honest feedback across social mediums. But let's come to you, Avdut. Part of your mission statement is to help companies win customers for life. That's a very interesting, proposition out there. Can you talk about, how this vision is carried forward by Netcore Cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good tagline in that sense. But I think the key to lifetime retention is, broadly the experience brands create right from that first interaction, to onwards, right? And that's exactly what multiple products that we have actually help brands achieve. And maybe let me give you a couple of examples on how we do it for different segments. Like in case of, let's say, mobile app brands, like in case of Khata Book, which is basically an app which is used by merchants and shop owners for their bookkeeping. I think they had this whole challenge around, their target audience being not so digital savvy, so because shop owners are not so digital savvy, they actually, wanted to see how we can make sure that these merchants get activated as soon as possible, because once that happens, a lot of their retention kind of gets taken care. And which is where they kind of used our guided onboarding through nudges to actually make sure that the merchant is able to add their employee details, salary payments, staff dues, and so on and so forth very easily in just a few clicks, with very guided nudges at each of the steps, and that actually almost led to about roughly about 3.5 times increase in the amount of employee details filled in by the merchants, right? So I think that is one way in which we help create, a very good personalized contextual experiences in the customer journey to make sure that the users are retained for a lot longer than what they would be without it. Another example would be, wherein for brands like Nykaa, My Team 11, Shemaru, and many others, we would have helped them actually stitch the entire customer journey by setting up these automated personalized messages across the entire customer journey as such, right from a welcome notification to, let's say, emails that they would send if a user is getting dropped out for product not being in stock, or let's say abandoning the cart, or even post purchase recommendations. So actually stitching the entire customer journey with messages at each stage is the second thing that we actually help a lot of these brands do. And in case of D2C brands, specifically e-commerce and D2C brands, like I mentioned earlier, making sure that users retain the product and making sure that users discover the product faster is important, which is where we use AI to actually help them find these products a lot more in an easier way. Like in case of Chumbak, we've actually created a personalized landing page for them as a brand for each user, which then makes sure that users are able to discover things faster. And in the same way, even if a user searches a product, the user gets a lot more personalized search results than what someone else would give. So a combination of experience and engagement is essentially how we help brands get to that lifetime retention of customers.
Right. Let's come to you, Karan. And I want to talk a little bit about this whole department when it comes to giving personalized recommendations, advice, relevant information to customers, because that's where a company stands out in delivering good quality customer service. So how did you build this department in the company? What were the thought processes behind it?
I mean, this is probably the most important department in our company ever since it was formed. It's obviously not been easy. It's obviously a place which keeps you grounded. It's obviously a place sometimes where in the initial days you would want to probably run away from more than you actually confronting it. But I think the day you start confronting that department a lot more and taking it a lot more head on is the day when you'll actually start becoming a better company and a more realistic company. It's not been easy. It's obviously, it needed to be probably a lot more manual than automation. I know there's been a lot of automation talk which has been there over here, which is great. And over a period of time, we also aspire to have a lot more automations which are built with whatever we're doing, which I'll mention a little later. But let me just put it this way, that every startup, and probably at the starting initial phases of their life, it's very important to at least start off manually, and at least very important to start speaking to your customers a lot better, trying to understand them a lot better, trying to advise them a lot better, and try to personalize a lot more things, what they may actually require, and then try to make an algorithm around it, which eventually turns out to be a lot more automated. What I have seen a lot of companies doing wrong is going down the path of immediate automation, let the AI take it, it'll automatically find out the sales, it'll automatically take out one variation, two variation without understanding what the customer actually wants, pumps it in through the system, which actually may not be the correct way. Over a period of time, once there's a lot of information which eventually comes to you and comes to the system, and there is understanding, and there is products which start becoming better, and customer feedbacks are taken. I appreciate Udayan's call message when he said that how many times have you spoken with the customer? I think that's very critical to start understanding. And what actually happens over here is when you have an automated system, I was expecting a lot of people to come back and say, yeah, we don't speak to the customer, but my email and my SMS and my push notification does. So I think it's the only advice what I'm going to give over here first is you start manual, you start small, you start understanding customers a lot better. You start understanding why they're buying you, what are they buying you for, and what you could actually do better, or how you could actually improve. I think Manish and I take customer calls very seriously. We speak to customers at least a few times in a month between both of us. Every senior leader who comes inside the organization has to speak to customers very often, so they understand why are they actually relevant and what they can actually make a difference to the customers. And if you don't keep that on top of what you're trying to do, you can't make a company which is relevant. And then over a period of time, once you start understanding and once you start putting basics together, then you start going into understanding and saying that, okay, how do you automate it? How do you make it a level where that before a customer even asks that question, he should not come to a level where he's asking that. Ideally, if he's bought a face wash, for example, and wants to know how to wash his face or what he should do after it, or how long does he have to probably use something for to achieve a certain result, you should probably educate that a lot better. There was a time which was being said that we were the only FMCG company who was actually giving a call to a customer after them actually purchasing a shampoo, understanding how's the shampoo. And this was done in 2016-17 when there was no system like that. And that itself gave us a lot of trust which was built, and a lot of people started to resonate and think that, yes, these guys do actually understand and relate to the brand. Over a period of time, once you do have a lot of these basics in order, then you obviously get down into trying to show more relevant information, trying to show better ads to the customers, trying to show better upsells to the customers, which I'm sure there are a lot of automation providers and like Netcore who are able to design great journeys that what information to provide to a customer and when, and not just mass bomb them, right? You have to provide relevant information to a customer where he's in the journey, and something which actually makes a difference to the person, because if you start sending information which they're not interested in, they're pretty much going to stop responding to you, and then you'll start getting irrelevant.
Right. Thanks for that, Karan. I want to bring in some audience questions at this point in time, because I believe we do have some, and I think let's get the audience what they really want, what they're attending this webinar for. So I'm going to quickly take one question. There is a question from Nishank to all the panelists. Any advice to companies going through digital transformation? For example, he said a 30-year-old company with traditional approaches targeting for huge numbers in the edtech and hybrid test prep space. So he wants to know, what kind of advice can companies going through digital transformation get? So who wants to take this?
I can take a stab, and maybe someone. Kunal, please go ahead.
Sure, I can just maybe just give like one quick piece of it. Look, I'm an engineer, and although I run a company and look at business, but I understand tech pretty deeply as a computer science engineer. So one thing I can tell you is that when you are looking at digital transformation, do not look at technology as something which will come and make your current processes automated or process efficient. You have to think about the fact that if you want to be a company for today and for tomorrow, then how is it that you want to serve your customers, and how is it that you want to manage your workflow? How is it that you want to manage your processes? You should be designing that on the whiteboard and then saying, I will implement this using technology. A lot of products, teams, companies, what they make a mistake on is that they still stick to the old ways of doing things, but they just introduce technology thinking that technology will reduce errors and it'll actually introduce more efficiency. But typically, the challenge that they end up facing is that the technology layer itself introduces more room for mistakes, more room for errors, and it eventually leads to reduction in efficiency because it becomes yet another thing to manage with complexity. So do try to think about processes and workflows and product experience and services afresh, and then say, I will use technology components to implement it. That is the best format of digital transformation, rather than doing the other way around.
Right. Udayan, you want to add to that?
No, I think he's nailed it. I think it's a culture. I think it's obviously all of those things. And when you're doing digital transformation, it's an org culture issue as well as it is about adopting to these new things. So all of these need to be taken care of. Yeah.
Okay, there are a couple of other questions as well. Vijit has a question. He's saying that we are a SaaS-based CRM targeting SMEs, and we're getting a lot of churn. So what are the best practices to stop churn? Valid question. Who's going to take that? Abdul?
I can. Oh, Abdul, you can go ahead, Brody.
Yeah. No, go ahead then.
So for churn, I think I am gonna just give you a fundamental framework to diagnose, and then solutioning. I can give you some nudges and hints as well. But the fundamental framework for diagnosing churn, one is it's like a friendship. You know, if you have a friendship with a friend and if they've stopped contacting you anymore, the hints and the behavioral changes started happening way before, right? So churn is actually a last attempt to resurrect them back. Know this very clearly, and it's also a low probability event. So first and foremost, start fixing stuff from activation, which is basically the first time when you meet your friend, how you behave with them, and how do you keep that spark alive with your friendship, right? That's the key place. But to diagnose churn specifically, you want to diagnose it in two key areas. One is how much, talk to your users again and try to figure out, are the churn reasons solvable and not solvable? So you'll talk to, let's say, 100 customers and you'll figure out, okay, there are 100 reasons, out of which 25 are actually solvable, 75 aren't, right? Very important to distinguish between voluntary and involuntary churn. Once you solve for that, right, then you want to go ahead and do all of the resurrection campaigns to give them offers and stuff and add friction to the layer, etc., which you're probably already thinking about. But do think about these things, because trust me, 99% of the people are not thinking about this.
Right. Abdul, you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's a small point on, then kind of covered it in some sense. Try to figure out why they're churning, I think, in real sense. And I think talking to customers, of course, is one option, but also using tools. We being in ourselves a SaaS company, also using tools like Hotjar, which give you understanding of user recordings, or let's say even using tools like Mixpanel and others to actually figure out what's the path where users are actually dropping out, right? I think that really can get you some more understanding on where do you need to really fix things. I think that is so understanding why behind it, and then working towards fixing some of those things could be one of the ways to do it. And more importantly, I think, like Udayan said, define that activation metric. Like if you're a CRM company, I think getting the user to add 10 contacts possibly is your activation, or let's say maybe integrating their website is an activation in our case. So the whole focus for us from a time user gets onboarded or logs into our platform is only to make sure he moves towards activation, and not like the final destination that you have. And any optimization needed there, I think you kind of focus on that.
Right. Thanks for that. There's one more question from Praveen to all the panelists. And I'm going to just quickly read it out. How can we do customer engagement and retention with customers during the POC stage with MVP, which may or may not have automated messaging options or customer life stage info? Who's going to take that? Karan, you want to try that?
I'll give it to someone else.
Okay.
I can give you my inputs on that. So look, I think this question has multiple components. You want to figure out engagement either at a POC stage, which is a proof of concept stage. You're trying to put a minimum viable product and MVP out there, but you also don't necessarily have automated channels of communication available. So you know, to figure out engagement. Look, one of the so I hope I've got the question right. Right, but one of the advantages of being in a POC stage and MVP stage is that it is not about numbers. It's not about going 2-inch wide and trying to cover a large number of customers and a large number of features. It's about going 2 mile deep, which is about picking a few set of features, picking a small set of customers, and really going end to end and figuring out, does this type of customer like my product and will that customer use this product? And how much time will they spend on this product? And that's the problem that you're really trying to solve for at that particular stage. Now, if you do not have automated communication channels available, it does not matter. Today, we have multiple systems available for reaching out to the customer. What you could do is that you could very easily build a very standardized auto chat bot or some kind of a bot in the product, or provide a simple call to action button where a customer can actually reach out if they have any issue. You can use WhatsApp, you can use other digital communication channel, you can actually have a web format of your product if it's not one app-based interface itself. And you can create different events based on which customers can then give their feedback to you. If the customer passes a certain stage successfully, they can actually go and give you a rating on the Google or Apple Play Store if you're an app-based product. Or if you're on a website, they can actually link to a feedback page and give you the feedback or a thumbs up on social media. So even if you do not have automated engagement tools built in-house, you can identify key milestones that you need the customer to cross. Based on those key milestones, let's say if there are 3 things that you want the customer to do, at the end of those 3 things, if the customer is able to perform a task or complete a step or consume a product or perform a transaction, you can then give an emotional high or a reward to that customer by giving them something good or taking them to the next level in your product, or actually acknowledging them openly on social media or giving them a reward in some format. So you can identify key milestones in your product journey and link each of those milestones to some kind of an action that you can then give as a feedback to the customer. So you don't really need to have very fancy, sophisticated systems. And if all else fails, nothing works, just pick up the phone and talk to the customer. In our early days, I used to spend tons of time just picking up the phone and talking to my customers, just to understand whether they really know about the product, do they understand or not. And that prompted us, for example, to create the product very quickly in 8 different languages. Because we thought that we could create a very cool English language product with a chat experience and that's it. But we realized that most part of the India wanted access to regional languages. And once we did that, our customers loved it. They found it very easy to use. But that happened because I engaged with the customers just by talking to them on the phone, and they were not able to talk to me properly in English. And I love the fact that the customers gave me feedback. And I was then convinced that we could actually go ahead and do multiple languages for the customers. And we did that. So you can engage with these customers like this. And if nothing else fails, like I said, just pick up the phone and talk to the customer and go and meet the customer.
I completely agree with what Kunal said. And it again goes back to something what I had said sometime before. When you're in the initial days and initial phases of trying and testing, it's very, very hard and very, very wrong to base any decision on automation or AI. And especially when you're trying to probably improve a product, understand why a person wants to buy that product. And that's the reason the interactions are way, way, way more important. And trying to sit on the sideline to understand that why a person is actually using the product, and then develop the product around it and make sure it is scalable. Everyone eventually wants it to be scalable. But I think the understanding about why and try to fix it, because as soon as you start leaving it to AI chatbots and try to automate the process, you may not probably, you're probably done. A customer gives you one chance. And if that one chance is gone, you're in trouble. But if you know that you're trying to go speak to a customer, and there's an empathetic voice towards trying to understand and try to learn more, people are a lot more receptive to actually probably tell why you should actually, or what you should do with your product.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, panelists. There's a question from Vidhi Mehta to all the panelists. When the customers in your particular funnel is small, does it make sense to hyper-personalize? And if yes, does it make sense to use technology or automation tools to hyper-personalize? Who's going to take that?
I think I'll take that. I think I'm going again with the similar thing, but it's not about how big or small the funnel is, but it's probably where are you in your company. If you are kind of comfortable with your product, and if you're confident that your product is going to give you the correct output to the customers, and you have gone tested it multiple times over, taken feedback, whether it's small, whether it's big, whether it is whatever it is, you can always automate it. The eventual goal is to automate it, but the goal over here is to give the correct information to that customer who will probably only give you one chance. A funnel of a B2B business is going to be probably much smaller than a B2C business, and his funnel is going to be a lot smaller. Does that mean that that person will not have any automation? No, that person will have automation. So the funnel size doesn't matter. It's the output as a customer. Is your automation solving what you're trying to do is the question. And if you solve that, you should always automate. There is no point you trying to do anything manual.
Kunal, you want to add
Yeah.
something to that?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to add a different perspective. I think what Karan said makes total sense. But maybe, Karan, I'll try to differ a little bit and add a different perspective. Maybe it's just different, not so much a disagreement, but a different perspective. What I would say is that, look, I think as far as this particular question is concerned, Vidhi, it's a very smart question. If I were to give a very pointed answer, the pointed answer is that if your funnel is looking small, don't go for automation. It does not, you're too early in the journey to even think of automation. What you should be thinking about is just obsessing on the funnel. And maybe a sample size of, I know, if you're a B2C product, then a sample size of 5,000 or 10,000 is required. If you're a B2B, like Karan rightly mentioned, your sample size might be 50. But you do need to figure out the drop-off points in the funnel. And if the drop-off points are very huge right at the top of the funnel, you have a fundamental problem, wherein you are either one of many products that customers can anyway access, you're not different, or you're not available to the customers, or customers don't understand what they're getting. So look at the funnel, attack the top of the funnel first. So if you have like an app install, let's say, and then after registration and then some information and then submitting some application and then maybe making a checkout or a transaction, don't worry so much about the transaction. First, figure out the top of the funnel. If you solve the top of the funnel, the bottom becomes better. And I think once you cross a certain threshold, then you should start thinking about automation. Otherwise, you'll end up solving the wrong problem. Because all of us, I'm assuming all of us are smart people here, we all have complexity bias, which means we get excited by and we get attracted to complexity. So we will want to create automation, we will want to solve problems, but that is how we are as individuals, as humans. Our psyche works like that. So just avoid getting into the trap of falling into automation too early on. I would say just attack the funnel, whether it requires talking to the funnel customers, emailing them, figuring out why they're not doing it. Just ask them and send them a gift afterwards. Send them whatever, like a small box of chocolate saying, hey, thank you so much. Or just send it to them advance saying, please let us know why. And they will tell you. And once you know, then go back and redesign your funnel and then think about automation once you have solved it. So once you realize that your funnel is working really well, but you are actually doing a lot of manual work, then you know automation is required. So that's how I would say.
Right. So, we have a lot of questions in the chat box. I'd request the audience to please leave all your questions in the chat box with your contact details so that we can answer these questions offline. You can also tweet your questions with the hashtag AskNetcore, and we will get back to you with all your responses to the question. So thanks so much for being such a wonderful audience out here. And I'd like to thank all the panelists for taking the time out and sharing all their experiences. I'm sure the audience really enjoyed the session as well, and really insightful session. So thanks everybody for joining in. With that, it's a wrap on the session. Thanks for taking the time out.